Now we begin with the latest Republican to enter the 2024 presidential race, Ron DeSantis. The Florida governor finally announced his presidential ambitions during a glitchy Twitter Live event last night. Not long after, DeSantis joined our very own Trey Gowdy on Fox News Tonight and made a campaign promise to get our country back on track.
I'm running to lead a great American comeback. We know the country's on the wrong track. We see it with our eyes. We feel it in our bones. We see the border being overrun. We see crime infesting the cities. We see the federal government making it more difficult for families to make ends meet. And we have a president who is a listless vessel, not energetic, and not dealing with the key challenges that are facing our country. But it does not have to be this way. Our decline as a country is not inevitable. It is a choice. And I think we can choose a better pathway.
DeSantis also outlined what he would do on his first day in the Oval Office.
What is the first thing President Ron DeSantis would do?
The border, there's a lot you can do. Ripping out Biden's anti-American energy policies, which you probably could do most of that executive. You'll probably need to do some of that legislative as well. And then reconstitutionalizing the administrative state. We have a bureaucracy that's totally out of control. You need to be willing to use Article 2 power to bring the administrative state to heel. I will do that.
And despite harsh criticism from both sides of the aisle and other candidates, presidential hopeful Ron DeSantis is embracing the competition.
I don't mind being called different things. I've been called everything but a child of God as it is. So that doesn't faze me. You can call me whatever you want. Just make sure you call me a winner, because that's what we've done in the state of Florida. And that's exactly what we would do nationally, not only in the election, but actually bringing all these great policies to bear.
Sean Duffy, what do you make of the strength of his message, and what do you make of the clarity of it, given the technological difficulties that he encountered when he first announced his launch?
So to talk about, you're running for president, you want to have a big bang of an announcement. It was more effective had I been counting sheep than watching that announcement, number one. Number two, I mean, the amount of energy you get from a crowd, you have 5,000 people in front of you, and the feed that comes from that is very real. Sitting in front of a screen with Elon Musk. Now, Elon is great. He's a powerhouse himself. He stole the stage, right? And Ron wanted to have the stage that night. So I didn't like this announcement from Ron. I think he stumbled. Also, his wife put out a video with a guy with a British accent, which we fought a war to get rid of the British. I don't know why they did that. And just one last thing, listen, Ron DeSantis would not be governor but for Donald Trump. He was flailing in the polls. Ron DeSantis stepped in and boosted his campaign. And just if that had happened to me, I don't know that I'd run against the guy that made my political career. I think there's something about character that comes into play. But make no mistake, he's been a great governor, great results, and I think he's clear on what, if he wins the election, what he'll have to do to fix the country.
Interesting analysis, Tudor. We'll get your thoughts on that. And also, pursuant to what Sean just said, a Fox poll on the GOP presidential preference shows Donald Trump squarely in the lead, to Sean's point, with 53%. Ron DeSantis behind it, 20%. And some articulate a delineation between college-educated Republicans and those that are more rural or don't have college degrees. What say you about their following, and again, about the strength of Ron DeSantis' message last night?
Well, I think the following is really unique for Donald Trump, and people forget this. There are people that come out for Donald Trump that come out for no one else, not other Republicans. So that's a wild card there. Who is actually going to vote for Donald Trump, and is that reflected in those numbers? The announcement, I thought, was unusual for someone who talked so much about COVID and being locked behind screens. And then he decided to have an announcement behind a screen. In fact, one that we couldn't even see his face. Also, this is someone who has been criticized for not being able to connect with people. And so that announcement is a time when you have all of your supporters around you. We see how much people love you. We want to see you interacting with people. And he didn't do that. And I think a lot of people went, why would you choose this when we've finally gotten away from being locked behind a screen?
Right, optics matter. And to that point, Jessica, a lot of people want to see that energy, that capability, that competence on the debate stage. So why don't we listen for a second on what DeSantis says he would do and what we should do regarding the primary debates. Watch.
I think we should debate. I think the people want to hear it. I grew up blue collar, working minimum wage jobs, and learned Nobody's entitled to anything in this world, Trey. You've got to earn it. And I think all of us have to go out and earn it. That's exactly what I intend to do. And I think the debates are a big part of the process.
Now, some argue that's sort of a veiled reference to Donald Trump, who has said that he might skip those debates. And I'm curious your thoughts to that, and also to the point that President Biden has said he might skip debates as well. Can you speak to the sort of the import of the strategy of acknowledging debates and how the American people need to see and hear that energy, to Tudor's point?
Well, I think there's a difference between primary debates and general election debates. Yes. So President Biden will be showing up to the general election debates, whoever the candidate is on the Republican side. He'll square off against him, as he did against former President Trump in 2020. In terms of what's going on the primary stage, the DNC is doing exactly what the national committees for both parties have done historically. They actually came out in support of not having debates and just saying full strength behind President Biden. Later, then Ronna McDaniel and the RNC did that for President Trump, essentially clearing the field. And there were candidates running against President Trump who didn't get their time in the sun at all. I understand no one thought that Mark Sanford was going to end up being president, but he was still running. And he was even stripped off the ballot in certain states that decided to bypass the entire primary system. So that's a bit of a false flag in terms of a comparison. To Ron DeSantis' launch, and I was on yesterday with Martha talking about this, and I thought, you know, there are 271 million people that are roaming around Twitter. Maybe this is smart. They can chop it up, right? He'll get great sound bites out of this. And, you know, he can have a rally next week, or he can have a rally tomorrow night. You know, our time is skewed in this digital world, right? Or maybe it doesn't matter. It obviously was a complete disaster. And hearing that Twitter didn't even check to make sure that they could handle, you know, 600,000 people or whoever tried to get in out of the gate, obviously that dwindled down, reflects very poorly on Twitter. The big thing for me, and obviously Ron DeSantis is not my candidate of choice, but he has a lot in his biography that he could have played up that he chose not to. When he came on with Trey Gowdy, and Trey is a wonderful interviewer, gave him a glowing biographical opening and wanted him to talk about his military service. And instead of doing that, he pivoted right away to gender ideology problems in the military, not talking about why he served, what it means to wear the uniform, things that are going to resonate with other veterans. He has a working class background. Working class people don't talk about the woke mind virus, ESGs, Bitcoin, and, you know, whatever George Soros is going to do to ruin the country. They want to hear about what your policies are, how you're going to lift people up who are farmers, who are policemen, who are teachers, et cetera. And I thought he just totally missed the boat, and they're out there bragging about their $1 million. Joe Biden, and he was widely criticized, certainly on the right and by some Democrats, for launching with a video. He raised $6.3 million from 96,000 individual donors on the first day, and Ron DeSantis wants a victory lap about $1 million.
And we still don't know the amount of those individual donors, to your point. It's interesting because everything that you said, I was sort of thinking about the WSJ's editorial board that called him more of a cultural brawler. And I think what I'm hearing from you sort of represents that. Harris, you've covered so many presidential campaign announcements. What did you make of the success of his and the rating?
So I don't think in the long run it's going to matter. I'm going to take kind of an oppositional view here because he's got some big events next week after Memorial Day, and he hits Iowa, and he hits New Hampshire, 4 stops in New Hampshire. He hits South Carolina, 3 stops there. We know the importance of those early voting states, particularly South Carolina, where you already have at least 2 in the GOP nominating race, and a president who decided that he wanted to skip over New Hampshire and put South Carolina first to try to get the black vote, and now he doesn't have the black vote. He's shedding from 90 to 58% in recent polling. So it really does highlight the fact, and I agree with Jessica on this, putting so much into those initial moments online and so on and so forth. This was about Elon Musk. Didn't we all see that? My goodness, he talked about himself and his platform almost the whole time.
His video is full of stock images of Elon Musk. It's so strange.
But Elon Musk himself then put out a tweet that said, oh, and, you know, the door's open to all the rest of the presidential candidates who want to come on my platform and blah, 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 blah. I mean, I get it. This was business. But it should have been the business of Ron DeSantis. And it will be. He'll refocus and he'll get back out there. But what it gave was something that I didn't ever think I'd see. And that was from one platform to another, a man who fights to fight Former President Donald Trump gets on and takes his whole idea and puts himself in as one of the pictures. Did you see that? Like he was actually watching on Twitter. I thought, wow, they've given this a lot of thought. And that gave the former president some fodder and some time to have fun with the audience on a platform he's not even on anymore.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And, you know, symbolism matters. And so I think coming out of that arguably rocky start, there'll be a lot of symbolism that they don't want to be associated with. But moving on to your point, and we'll keep you posted on all developments. Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.